morning and welcome to Mortgage Talk Mondays. I'm your host, Mason Kealy, where we believe apart from your family, your mortgage and your house are probably your largest investments. So it doesn't hurt to know a little bit more, maybe have a few tips and tricks. Today, I'm going to be talking about how you can get a mortgage even if you can't debt service for it by leveraging your portfolio. And when I say leverage, I don't actually mean using a portfolio as security, but just the fact that you have a portfolio might make it easier to get a mortgage. Our guest today, his name is Cameron Wilson. He's a senior portfolio manager at Dominion Securities. He does everything investments. I've worked with him closely for quite a few years, and he's going to give us maybe some ideas on what's going on in the market. There's a whole bunch of things that are going on that had people worried. Obviously, Donald Trump, the legal challenges, what's going on with that, how that's affecting your stocks, maybe your full portfolio, the Great Reset. Everyone's asking questions about that from the World Economic Forum. There's so many, COVID. Everyone wants to know how all of these major things that are going on, that are getting people worried, getting protests going on, how's that going to affect your investment portfolio? So we'll talk to Cameron, see what he thinks, and then we'll go from there. Let's, without further ado, let's bring Cameron onto the call. Hey, Cameron, welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Mason.
You're welcome. So one of the things I told my listeners I was going to talk about was, I'd call it market uncertainty, but you'd probably have another name for it. Basically, all the things that are going on right now, with those Trump legal battles in the States. Obviously, American media affects what happens in the markets for our investments. People getting worried and protesting, the Great Reset. COVID, especially, the lockdowns. How's that affecting, portfolios, and does it impact maybe the stock market differently than the mutual fund markets? Like, how's that looking right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. Is there anything different than any other year? I would say no. For the most part, every year there is an event of some sort. And investors and people generally have a short-term memory. And another thing, we're subject to a lot of biases. So the most common one we quite see is something called recency bias. That means something that just happened will continue to happen. So if things are really good, of course they're going to be really good next month and the month after and the month after. And what we saw back in January, February was this outbreak of COVID, global pandemic, and things weren't looking great. And they got worse. And so we have that projection of things are going to get worse and worse and worse. What happens is human nature, we've got a way of adapting. A number of different events have happened over the years. Conflict with North Korea, conflict with Iran, conflict with Russia, conflict with Cuba, years ago. So every year there's always something, governmental, environmental, and then we've got, we had the nuclear disaster in Fukushima, a number of years ago. And,
I remember that.
When something happens, it's very impactful because the news travels so quick and it can affect everybody around the world very quickly. But we do have a way of adapting to it. I kind of give an example most recently, with COVID, people can't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. Kind of goes back to 9/11 in 2001. When that happened, pre 9/11, we could travel on our driver's license. You crossed the border on your driver's license, checked in at the airport, and walked on the plane. A couple of years, no one really flew too much until you're traveling on your passport, on your legal name, with a bit more security. But we got back to that, and we went through this as well over the years.
So I know like. Investment advisors say, don't invest emotionally, right? Like if you're freaking out about what's going on right now, don't pull all your money out into cash. Especially when I talk to people and maybe I mention you or another advisor, I'll be like, what, just don't panic. talk to Cameron, because he actively manages your money, right? And I actually picture in my head, when I say actively manage, I picture you like sitting in front of your computer screens, like typing away all the time, right? Which you probably are, right? But maybe tell me then, because this is one thing I'm not exactly sure on. So if someone's got their money invested in like GICs or mutual funds, at their local branch or whatnot, how does that differ from someone that's got their money actively managed, like maybe performance wise, or how does that generally look?
Yeah, it's different advisors are licensed differently. At the bank branch, they're licensed to buy and sell mutual funds. On our platform and through my licensing, we're licensed to buy and sell mutual funds and stocks and bonds and ETFs, all different investments. And under my licensing, I can do that on a client's behalf without having to get their approval. So if I decide one day we like TD more than Royal Bank, we can sell TD and buy Royal Bank for all the clients. If we think there should be a better shift out of, we're heading to a shutdown. In early January, we kind of heard of a SARS outbreak happening in China. I kind of went back to my playbook of when SARS broke out in 2013. Get rid of the airlines, get rid of the cruise lines. And lo and behold, they all took quite a hit, and we navigated around that. The clients being nervous and wanting to sell and get out. I think it comes down a fair bit to advisor education to the client of knowing what they're comfortable with for risk tolerance of there is going to be bumps in the road. It's not a bottom left, top right, straight, smooth line.
Yeah. And I guess the reactivity, that speed of reactivity, that can make a big difference. Like I remember we had one discussion and you were actually saying that you were watching Trump make an announcement, on the news just to hear if he mentioned any companies that were getting stimulus or something. So, because that's going to affect stock prices. So, I guess that's probably a perfect example.
Yeah, when he first started announcing who he's going to be giving funding to for testing and also vaccine development, we actively write down the names, do research as quick as we can, and see if we can buy them before essentially the masses, before that news disseminates out. And there is usually, sometimes there's a 5 to 10 minute lag between, a news article or something coming out about a company and the share price reacting positively or negatively. And we try and just get ahead of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you're also obviously, like if your portfolio, so all your customers, if it's not increasing and it's not growing, that affects you as well, right? So you've got the same interest as your clients to really benefit them with that, right?
Yeah. So it's important to, ask your advisor, how are you paid? If you're hiring a roofer, how they're paid. If you're hiring an accountant, how they're paid. We generally bill clients based on their account balance, not what they're invested in. Different advisors are compensated differently. If they're in more aggressive funds, they get paid more. If they're in GICs, they get paid less. So, sometimes there can be a perceived, maybe they're not aligning client interest with advisor interest. On our end, it doesn't matter if we're 100% invested or 100% in cash. Some people say, well, you're still getting paid. Yeah, we're still being paid to navigate the market for you.
Yeah.
And there is going to be dips. It's my job to assess the client's risk of, can they handle that dip and how much of a dip they can handle. So if they're needing to get 10% returns to fund their retirement goals, but they can't handle any choppiness, that needs to be discussed, saying, hey, either save more, spend less, but if we're going to take more risk in the portfolio, you have to be okay with the fluctuations. And that comes up, especially when you get times of volatility through March. I think we only had 2 phone calls from clients, a bit excited about what was happening. On average, our drop through that period was about 7 to 9% in our pension style portfolio.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic. Is it just the investing and the shifting of funds and everything that you guys do, or is there like other services that you provide for clients?
Yeah, as much as it's about managing investments, I love doing a financial plan or projection for a client when we can show them, hey, in 10 years or 20 years, you're going to be okay. And let's overestimate expenses and underestimate returns, and you're still going to be okay. Mm-hmm. So building in that conservative approach to long-term planning, doing that plan, we call it our My GPS report, goals, priorities, and solutions, to see if there's any red flags on the horizon that we can adjust for now. Okay. Easier to make adjustments when you can kind of see that there's a storm brewing on the horizon, rather than waiting for the storm to come and then trying to scramble to batten down the hatches.
Does that planning for the clients, or is it just kind of preliminary?
That's we'll do it for people potentially going to be, so we give them an idea. Here's part of our process. We will do a financial plan for you and update it on an annual basis, or add things change, and that's included with our management.
Okay, that's fair enough. So you're not. So I mean, like all the stuff in the news and everything, you're not telling people to heavily go into cash or anything like that, because the world's economy is going to reset or anything.
Yeah, there's always people react 8 times greater to fear than they do to greed. So humans, we've reached the top of the food by running away from things that can hurt us. And news and media and Twitter and Facebook has a great way to spread negative fear news than positive news of, if they came out and said, unemployment is going to lower next year, things are going to be pretty stable and boring, there's nothing exciting on the horizon. Well, that's not exciting. If they go, well, house prices might drop 20%, it might spike, and they're going to wipe out everyone's debt, that information spreads a lot quicker, because it creates a fear of oh my gosh, do I have to do something to protect myself, or make sure my nest egg is still intact? Am I gonna, is my house price going to plummet? Is my stock price going to plummet?
Yeah, and that comes right back to the emotional investing, right?
Yeah, it's right now, I mean, we've had a pretty good rally out of March. There's a lot of neighbor talk of, I've made so much money in Google or Facebook or Microsoft. Depends what it looked like going through March too. A lot of people, they'll always talk about their winners, not about their losers.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Even the portfolios we have, not everything is positive, and we're okay with that. Clients will look at their statement and go, "Oh, we're down here, and we're up there." I said, "Yeah, let's look at the pie rather than the individual specific ingredients." If our target for your plan to meet your goals is, we can meet your goals making 5%, and you spending an extra $20,000 a year. Well, if we hit 7, we've got gravy, and we have some buffer to absorb shocks like what happened in March.
So I know people watching this are also going to have a question as well. How much do they actually have to have in general? Not specifically for you, you don't have to tell me, but how much money do people have to have saved up before they can get someone like you to actively manage their money and make them those good returns and be responsive? Do they have to be super wealthy?
No, I mean, I will honestly talk to anybody. If there's a fit and I think we can work together and what our services are aligned with a client's goals, then we can look to work together. If I don't think maybe is not a good fit, I'll direct them to someone that I think might be a better fit. Generally, for a discretionary account where we're making the active buy and sell decisions, around 100,000 and more. Reason being, I'll use Amazon for example. Amazon is trading about $4,000 Canadian right now. So
Right.
if someone had a $20,000 account, well, that's 20% of their portfolio in one name. That's not good risk management.
Yeah, you're not diversified there at all. Yeah.
If at a $100,000 account and Amazon is 4%, that's okay. We've got risk parameters on our portfolios so that we can't take any big bets in certain sectors or certain companies, no small penny stocks, because we've been given that fiduciary duty to do what's in the client's best interest, not take big bets.
Now, I did mention earlier, before you were on, I was going to tell people how, if they do happen to have a larger portfolio, how they can kind of work that to their advantage to get qualified for a mortgage. If you, if you're buying an investment property, or if you want to, sell your current house and buy a bigger house, a lot of traps that people fall into that I've seen is they'll have like a big portfolio. Maybe they sold their house and they're just keeping it in their investments and they're renting right now, right? So that maybe they have, I don't know, like say they have $700,000, right? Because they sold a house in Vancouver, and they're say they just started a job, or they started a job and they're working and they're maybe making 50 grand a year, but they want to buy $1 million home. And most people are like, look, you don't make enough money to do that. But the customer says, well, I've got all this money in the bank. Like, why should my income matter? So I was telling people, like, most banks have programs. Like, obviously I work for RBC. We have programs like this, but they have wealth programs where if you have enough money in your portfolio to cover, say, for instance, like your expenses and your mortgage payments and everything for the whole term of the mortgage, be it like a 4 or 5 year term, you can actually get approved for bigger mortgages than your income will allow, just by, the mortgage specialist like me going out and say, hey, look, we're going to make a really good business argument for this person. And we're going to say, even if they lost their job, all the payments are going to be made because that portfolio is sitting there, right? And that might happen to someone that's worked, like a couple that's worked their whole lives and they're retired. They've got a big portfolio, and now they want to buy a new place, or they want to buy a rental home, and they're on pension, right?
Yeah. Another comment I've seen is, if a husband and wife and they're in commission sales, whether they're working for, a company like Cisco, or they're in pharmaceutical sales, so they're on commission income. They might not be at retirement, but still, their income is going to fluctuate, and they have an investment portfolio, and they want to buy a rental property or look for a vacation home. The bank, my background was from lending. I worked for another institution for a number of years and did mortgages, and bank branch financial plan. So on the bank side with mortgage lending, a lot of it is done on cash flow. If someone doesn't have cash flow, they're not lending. In recent years, they've come out with new programs saying, okay, your cash flow may be low, but if you've got investments and savings, we know you've got the habits to be a good saver. Can we use your investment portfolio as a way to generate income, or can we use your investment portfolio as collateral against a loan? And I know on the Domain Security side, we've talked before about something called a wealth line, or basically it's a line of credit attached to unregistered investments, and clients can dip into that whenever they want. We bill interest to it monthly. They can pay it back whenever they like. So it becomes quite flexible, and there's no qualifying for it. It's directly pledged against their investment portfolio. Yeah,
and when you were the first thing I thought of as well was small businesses, right? Sometimes a lot of small businesses, they say, hey, well, you know what, we're not going to have a pension when we finish, right? So they do save up a big chunk of money, but sometimes those small business owners, they pay themselves very little. Obviously, they don't want to get taxed like crazy but their business might make a lot. They might not pay themselves a lot, but they still might want the investment to say, or the opportunity to say, hey, there's a great investment property here, or a plot of land or something that I want to buy and build on, right? So that works out as a good opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, it's very handy because it's on our side. It's not needing to be qualified for it. Judge investment portfolio, just so if there is a market correction, we're not having to do something called a margin call. Depending on the investments, can go up to 70 or 80% against the investment. That's where it's important to talk to specialists like yourself of, okay, how can we structure this? If there's not a way at the branch, bringing in someone from Dominion Securities, look at what options we've got for them here.
And can you guys do all the other things too, like tax-free savings accounts and RESPs and everything, or do you have to like work with the branch in partnership for anything?
No, we can open investment accounts personally and corporately. Personally, if it's a TFSA or RSP, stock donation accounts, stock option accounts. So some of the clients that might be paid by stock option or incentives, we can hold them as well. And then corporate investment. So a lot of business owners, I need to take out of my company and put it in my personal name. Well, we coincide with their accountant to work on the tax side of it, to say, no, maybe it's best you leave it in the company and have the company.
Yeah, that would make sense. So I think in parting, I want to ask a question, kind of putting you on the spot here. Okay. What's a good next, I don't know, couple months or whatnot? I know you can't tell the future or whatnot, but what you personally, what have you thought, hey, that might be a pretty good investment in the next couple of months, maybe based on like some of those things we talked about that are happening in our environment?
Yeah, you cut a second there, so I'm gonna guess you asked what would be a good investment over the next 6 to 18 months.
Yes, exactly. What's been interesting you?
I think as the vaccine rolls out and people get vaccinated, what's on my radar is going to be some of the travel companies, whether it's cruise or airline. The risk is if we get a second wave or a second strain, which we're starting to hear a little bit about, that they don't reopen. The other day, Air Canada, for example, came out and issued $850 million of shares to put it on their bank account. So they're not making sales. So how do they get capital? They try and sell more shares.
Gotcha.
For that, I don't think the trend of work from home, shop from home, video streaming is going to go anywhere anytime soon. We'll get over this and we will get back to a new normal, kind of like 9/11. It was a new normal. We did adapt to it. Other companies on my radar, I mean, the Canadian dollar pre-COVID was around 75 cents. Going through COVID, we dropped down to about 70. As of right now, we are 78.6.
Yeah, we're doing awesome.
Almost a 10% rally in the Canadian dollar in 6 months. So some people may say, oh, my, U.S. market's at all-time high, or I'm up 10% on the share price. Yeah, currency comes back. So that's what we look to even portfolio saying, if the stock price rises, that currency isn't going to whip you around either. Is honestly going through a process of, if we go through another March, are you okay seeing that in your portfolio? And if some clients, we've come across a few and referred people saying, hey, I was in what I thought was a balanced strategy, went down 30. I'm not comfortable with that. Okay, reassess risk. Markets.
Well, and that's key, right? It's definitely key. It's key reassessing your risk all the time. Because especially with things that are changing so rapidly these days.
Yeah, and people like, you look back in your own life and financial picture 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, it's always changing. And so, letting your advisor know, hey, this is coming up, or it's going to be a change on the horizon. I want to help my kids out. Okay, thanks for letting me know. We're going to start building up a bit of a cash balance so you can, help them with a down payment, or, we'd like to buy a vacation property in this, letting me know, so making adjustments to the portfolio. So when you call and say, hey, we need $2,000 to down payment, I don't have to scramble and sell stocks at good times or bad times. I've already set that aside.
I'd love to be able to get a vacation property right now. Yeah. Anyways, thank you very people. If you want to reach out and have your properly managed, lots of experience. He's the guy to talk to. I'd recommend him any day.
Much appreciated, Mason. I'm glad I can work with partners like yourself, and I know when I've sent clients to you for mortgage advice, they've come back more than thrilled with your expertise and contact.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.